Hi, this is Brad Straley, and you're watching Jacksonville for Life, local pro-life television, compliments of Comcast Television. Today we have two special guests with us. You'll hear stories today that you've probably never heard from before on television. I'm afraid to say you've never heard from our elected officials in City Hall, nor from our Congresswoman Corrine Brown. But the stories today are important. That's why we've asked these two young ladies to be with us. Our number 2 show of all time is going to be, our second show of all time is these women talking about abortion, how it affects their lives, their family, and ultimately our community. Melissa, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
If you don't mind, we'd love to hear about your testimony and your story.
Okay. When I was 17, I became pregnant through date rape. I was scared, young, alone, had no support. I was told I'd have nowhere to stay if I kept the baby. I was taken to the clinic with no hope, nowhere to go. The day of my abortion is still a little blurry. I remember more each time. But things that I do remember, I remember the nurse arguing with me about how far along I was. When you're raped or date rape, you tend to remember the exact date. So there was no doubt in my mind I was 16 weeks along. They kept trying to convince me I wasn't that far. What I didn't know at that time, that my son, Christopher John, at 16 weeks, could suck his thumb, turn around, move, could even feel pain. And his sex was clearly identifiable. It was a far cry from the blob of tissue that the nurse was trying to tell me that he was. It makes it that much harder now when I remember going into the room and being on the table and the vacuum machine that I saw, not knowing what it was. The pain that I felt both physically and emotionally. Those I'd remember clearly. From there I went into a deep depression, trying to deny what happened. If the pain and the guilt would come up, I just tried to push it down, pretend it wasn't there. I felt that the pain, it was something I deserved for allowing that to happen. It was my punishment. I have notes because I'm so nervous. And when my first daughter was born, it was, went along with trying to push it down and forget, and I felt that it had to have been the right choice, because if I hadn't made that choice, I wouldn't have my daughter now. Again, in denial, trying to deny what I had done was wrong. And realize that the abortion had affected my life so much, and I had affected every choice and everything that I'd done from that point. And a very difficult time bonding with her. I felt that if I got too close, then it would hurt too much when she died, because how could I possibly keep such a precious gift? I didn't really keep the first one I was given. How could I love her and hold her and then lose her? My second daughter was born. I went to the other extreme. Became extremely protective. I didn't want anyone driving them anywhere. They might get into a car accident. I tried staying home with her, so I wouldn't have to take her to daycare for fear that something would happen to her there. I was always... Sorry.
No, you're doing fine.
I would try to ignore the pain that would come up. I would try to push it down. I would always have it in the back of my mind, though. I was going to church. I had what I called surface friends. Friends that, on the outside, they were great friends, but I wouldn't let them get too close. Because if they ever found out what I had done, they would hate me, they'd shun me, and then I would have nobody. I would be alone, which is how I felt in my deep, dark cave that I was holding everything in. And it seemed like about once a year, it would get harder and harder to push it down around the anniversary of the abortion. I would cry more. It would take longer as time went on. I'd never really told anyone except for my husband about the abortion because of being afraid of how they would react. One day I did. I shared with a really dear friend about my abortion and what had happened. And to my surprise, she had had one too. but she had just recently finished Rachel's Vineyard and told me that there was hope and there was healing and that I didn't have to hide anymore. And it seems like every time I turned around, I was hearing somebody's story on the radio, or there was a cardboard testimonies at our church where people were sharing their secrets. And I wanted so badly to have that same freedom and peace that they seemed to have. So I finally did. I called Donna, and then I went to Rachel's Vineyard. And through Rachel's Vineyard, I was able to start my process of healing. And then First Coast Women's Services as well, the Bible study. I was able to really let go and accept God's forgiveness and healing that I so badly needed. It was really hard, but with God, all things are possible. I mean, it's a process that will, I'm sure, go on forever. It just gets a little less excruciating. That's why I want to come on here, why I want to speak out whenever possible, because I feel so strongly that the cave that I felt that I was living in, the shame and the fear that I held quiet for so long, I felt so alone, to let others know that they're not alone. They're not the only ones. There are others out there, and there's healing. Through Rachel's Vineyard, I mean, you can get the hope that you need and not be alone. You're not the only one.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you so much.
Don, you care to share about the Rachel's Vineyard?
Courage, doesn't it?
It sure does.
It really does. It takes courage to come out of the cave and to come to the healing light. Yes, I would. And Brad, thank you again for the opportunity. Rachel's Vineyard is it's actually the world's largest post-abortion healing ministry now in 47 states and about 17 countries. Started by Dr. Teresa Burke up in Philadelphia, tremendous, beautiful, faith-filled psychologist who wrote Rachel's Vineyard. We're preparing for our 26th retreat here in Jacksonville. And I do want to tell anyone out there that it's very, very confidential, very compassionate, and very non-judgmental, all which meant the world to me 12 years ago when I went on my own Rachel's Vineyard retreat. And after 26 years at that time of hiding in the dark and not knowing what was wrong with me and exhibiting some of the same symptoms that Melissa so bravely spoke about, that I finally found the answers to questions I didn't even know I had. So I think we come on here, you know, we're nervous, we're shaking, we're not professionals, but we come on here to tell you you're not alone. You're not alone. Men and women, more and more men are coming to Rachel's Vineyard now. And people will say, men, you know, it was a new concept to me too. I thought, what? But I must say, you know, that men truly, I think now, are realizing the role they had in abortion, whether it's being part of the sad statistic that 64% of teenage abortions are coerced, either by parents or boyfriends, and being part of that, and then seeing afterwards, perhaps seeing the girl completely fall apart, and knowing they had a hand in that, or the opposite end, where they might not have even known that their girlfriend was pregnant, let alone that she had an abortion, find out about it later, that their child was killed with no knowledge of this. So in either case, men are suffering also. And Teresa's husband, Kevin, recently wrote a book, and I brought a few along here, and I'll mention them just in case anyone would like to get any of these. Please call me at any time. We'll put the website and the phone number up, but it's called Redeeming a Father's Heart. And there's stories in here of men and the profound impact abortion has had on them in either role, as I mentioned before. Another excellent book for women and men who are out there suffering following an abortion, not exactly knowing why you're suffering. This was supposed to be the fix. This was supposed to take care of everything. I think most of us go to the clinics and the hospitals back when I went, feeling that we had no choice. This was just, our back was against the wall, whether it's fear of parents at age 16, 17, or just, feeling like this was the right thing to do. I can't be a burden. This is the right thing to do. I'm not equipped to be a mother. All these reasons come into play, and what we quickly find out is it's not a solution. Now you've got a boatload of problems. You've got all the symptoms of anger and denial and isolation, fear of condemnation. Even with women, we talk about everything. We talk about everything. There's commercials on television that make me blush, you know what I mean? And I just find that this is one of the most heavily guarded secrets out there. We're all suffering. As a community, we're suffering. You so courageously and wonderfully put the signs up in Jacksonville for Life that 8,000 children are aborted every year in Jacksonville. Well, that's 16,000 men and women who are suffering. And if you bring in grandparents and siblings and aunts and uncles, you've got a whole slew of people that are silently suffering. So this book is called Forbidden Grief. It's a perfect name, if you ask me. It talks a lot about people's stories, a lot of, you can read, I was sort of shaking my head as Melissa was speaking about different things, the same reactions that I had felt 37 years ago. It wasn't immediate. One of the most immediate feelings after abortion is relief. So someone may come out of there and say, whew, glad that's over, I'm good to go now. And slowly, slowly starts the downhill slide. The condemnation of yourself. I have people come up to me all the time when we're out speaking, and they'll say, my child would have been 32 years old. My child would have been 14 years old. We never forget. You can never forget. You just try to stuff it down for years, and when something comes up, like a show like this that causes someone's heart to start racing, and you become very uncomfortable, and the tears start welling up in your eyes, I say, let those tears fall. Let that grief come out and come to a safe place, whether it's the Bible studies here in town, whether it's Rachel's Vineyard. If you go on the internet, you can do a search, afterabortion.org, rachelsvineyard.org. There are many, many resources now. And part of what we want to do is raise awareness, like you do, of the fact that there is help out there. There's hope out there. You can live a fuller life, forgive yourself. Sounds impossible maybe to some of you, but it is possible. And I think that it's important that people know that there is help out there. Even, if you feel like your back is against the wall, if you feel you're too young to have a child, there's so many resources about, just monetarily, educationally, there's resources for women and young men who find themselves in an unplanned pregnancy.
Sonia, would you mind giving the website and the hotline number?
Oh, not at all. Thanks so much.
Sure.
It's www.rachelsvineyard.org, and the local hotline in Jacksonville, and please remember that all calls are confidential. The hotline is 904-221-3232.